did not plunder and rape their people. We did not commit genocide against those people. But they have, for 2,000 plus years, have been engaged in a war of genocide, physiologically, psychologically, spiritually, economically, and in all other forms. And I don't think it's a personality trait that's causing this behavior. I think what we're looking at is the nature of the beast. And we constantly make a mistake thinking they're making a mistake. They're not making a mistake. They're doing what nature created them to do. And that's hard for even some of the hardcore of our people to accept. Everything in nature has a purpose. Everything in nature has a destiny. It seems that we can get confused in acknowledging and carrying out our destiny, and the African is confused. Because there's nothing wrong with the European. There's nothing wrong with the European. Something's wrong with you. You're the one that's not being what the universe created you to be. You're trying to be what the universe created someone else to be. But that's because of being a casualty of war and wars. But you don't want to be a casualty of war and wars. You want to act like you're normal. There's nothing normal about our behavior. Except when you're in this room trying to alter that behavior. You know, the only way an African will ever be free is to become what our ancestors were before we met them. If that's not the goal for how you're to be, you're not in the liberation movement. Do you understand that? A cat that has been confused to think it's a rabbit by whatever methodology. A cat that's confused to thinking it's a dog by whatever methodology will never be a cat until it becomes a cat again. You understand? See how simple that is? Now the African must become an African again. Dress is only one of the motifs. Hairstyle is only one. They were all tools we created to teach ourselves about ourselves. Music and drumming, these are all tools that we taught ourselves to teach ourselves about ourselves. Right? But we've got something else to do. The white man has convinced us that there's something called death. Well, there's no way you can be an African if you accept death as being a reality. I am my mother and my father. When they created me, they created themselves. Even before they left. My mother and my father was me before this time. I am them after their time. But I am still them. And they were my grandparents and great-parents and great-parents and great-parents, going back to a point that is unimaginable because you cannot imagine creation. You can't conceptualize a time when nothing existed, because if you assume nothing existed, then something had to exist for nothing to exist. So you can't even go there. What you can go to is that existence have always existed. Existence have always existed. I think in one of our ancient books, it's called the Pyramid Text. And what became the Christian and the Muslim and the Jewish genocide story is in that ancient African text called the Pyramid Text. And just a little bit of it, it goes like this. And this is the divine causation, saying, I created myself out of myself. I caused existence to exist so that existing might exist. And when I realized that I existed, my art was at my side. If you understand the implication of that, my art is the symbol of the feminine energy in the universe. It's also the harmony, balance, reciprocity, etc. But when the thing that said it was God realized it existed, it found that that concept of the feminine notion of justice already existed at its side. He says, I then cough up shu, meaning the wind. And coughing up is a metaphor. You know? And I spat out tefnut, the gases in the air. The book is a dissertation on quantum physics from way back then, telling you how the ancestors saw existence becoming to exist. It's your literature. You wrote it when you were your grandparents and your great-parents. There's no one in here that hasn't always been here. No one. No one in here that hasn't always been here. When you gave birth to your children, you gave birth to yourself. Okay? They are you tomorrow. You are they yesterday. You can't possibly die. There's no end that can come to. And then the airway says it, they say, Sobe Lisa. Sobe Lisa means the totality of creation as divinity. The totality of creation as divinity, which means everything and everyone in this room. So when we are talking about African liberation, this is not just a political game. We've got all these people in these offices saying they're the political leader, they're the prime minister, they're the president. And nothing has changed in the condition of our people. They're not prime minister of anything except their wallets. They're not president of anything except how they humbly serve those who have come to disrupt our realities. We are African peoples. We are the creator of the world. When the universe decided to be human, it was an African woman that the universe became, and then gave birth to itself. And here we are. Let me make sure you can hear me. Y'all can hear me well?
Yeah.
Normally I stand, but I've got a banged up knee. But Baba Mapanga has worked on it, so it's feeling better. But you know, like you have to also age when you hit, and in 5 months I'm gonna hit that big 8-0, right? So when you get up there, your body don't work exactly like it used to work. It don't heal as fast as it used to heal. But I'm here because I'm a servant. I have a responsibility to myself. I have a responsibility to you. I have a responsibility to the universe. Right now, this war that we've been in, we won the war a long time ago. You don't understand that you won the war because you don't realize you've been in a war. You won the war, but you don't know how to negotiate the peace. Right? To negotiate the peace, you have to understand where you belong in the process. The African being. Now, there were a time when we spoke to trees and trees spoke back to us. Well, the time isn't lost. The tree still speaks to us. We still, with us, who have forgotten how to speak to the tree. Everybody in here today have been nourished by some plant, animal, fish, or bird. You didn't go kill a human being to nourish yourself, right? You eat everything else in nature, right? So you are everything else in nature. You're everything. But do you remember the law of relationship between you and all of the everything? No. That's what we've lost. What is the rule and the regulation that has to do with the kind of nutrients you have to take depending on where you live and who you are? It may seem simple now, we talk about holistic this and vegan this and that. The cultural norm in Africa was to know all those things. Those things was not an aside. That was the daily understanding of our life. We knew that the thing we call nature and the thing we call cosmology and the thing we call ourselves, as human, we're all one thing. Your zinc, your magnesium, your iron, your manganese, all of the things you call minerals and elements makes you up. All of the things that make up nature. African culture was simply an understanding of how all this works. And that's what they've taken away from us. An understanding on our relationship to nature. An understanding on our relationship to cosmology. We're matter, we call this physical thing, and energy, the light thing that we can't see. Most of that light comes from the Milky Way, Jupiter, Mars, the sun, and the moon. But you don't think of it like that. Your moon dust, your sunlight, your Milky Way light that takes thousands of years to get to you and make you up. You are the universe. You are the ecology. There's nothing in the ecology that's not in you. But are you managing it appropriately? Are you creating the harmony and balance? Or do you have too much of this and too little of that and none of this and not enough of that? Because we've lost the sacred science of Africans knowing themselves. So when we talk about freedom, yes, it includes making sure we can provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for ourselves and our family. That's the bottom line, essential. When we talk about freedom, we talk about we must control economics, politics, and culture where we are. We must talk about controlling land, labor, and resources. Those are essentials. But what is the governing ideology? What is the rule that tells you how to control economic, politics, and culture? Where do you get the rule that tell you how to manage land, labor, and resources? That is to know nature and how she works. To know cosmology and know how she works. Our people were so absolutely brilliant. Now someone has to be my timekeeper and do that 5 minutes. I was trying to think coming here, what was the message, you know? And so it is us realizing we have to become us. There's a young man right now, and we're calling his name Ibrahim Traore. But he does not know, stop from that, don't even play the drums, because he does not run that country by himself. He did not take control of that government by himself. He does not make those decisions by himself, and I doubt if he writes those speeches by himself. We've got to call the rest of those young brothers and sisters that surround him. Otherwise, we are holding him up to be killed by our enemy, and we have so psychologically confused ourselves. When they kill the one we hold up, we die too. Those other men and women that make up the Burkina government, that make up the Burkina army, without them there would be no Abraham Traore. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I knew his brother Thomas Sankara, ate dinner with him, sat with Campari, his murderer, sitting right beside me. None of us knowing that a boy who grew up in his house, whose father took him in when his father died, raised like his brother, would do something like that. But that's because when you lack an understanding of what African consciousness really is, you can do something like that. But if he understood that Thomas was him, and he saw him as being sacred, as the gods of our ancestors, he couldn't do nothing like that. But many of us, and I reached for my electric, there's some aware certain electric, you know, today. And I walked out, I didn't bring a single electric. And you rarely see me, I'm all decorated. with my legacy. And I said today I would tell you a little bit about those things. Where do those beads come from in America, in the Americas, the way we use it? When we were kidnapped in this war and taken to the Americas, they took away our institutional construct. It was death to play drums. It was death to dance our traditional dance. It was death to do our rituals. It was death to do our ceremonies. It was death to teach with our culture, our values, our interests, and our principles. And so we came up with a very unique way. We took beads that he'd go shopping and come and say, oh, hey, James, we bought you some beads. We know you like people like beads. We took his beads and we recreated our institutions. Okay? Each one of those beads is a school of thought. Each one represents what a school represented in a university construct. If you think of a bead, you've got the green and the black, and so this is Shango. And Shango is the god of iron. That's your primitive understanding of Shango. I mean, that's Shango, so Shango is the red and the white. Shango is a king. Most kings are looked upon as despots, people who operate from ego and arrogance and greed and so forth. And the early symbol of Shango, that's exactly who he is. And he got so arrogant that one day he had his two younger brothers fight to the death, but the winner being the one who would be rewarded with wealth and the kingdom and position. And when the actuality occurs where one brother kills the other and he realized his stupidity, he runs into the woods and he hangs himself. Abakuso, then they come up with the term, the king is not dead. Because while he's hanging himself from this tree, while he's hanging his ego, while he's hanging his arrogance, while he's hanging his selfishness, while he's hanging his brutality, a woman, a metaphorical woman, not a real woman, with locks comes running. She can become an antelope and morph into many things, and she's called Oya. And she comes and cuts him down. What she did was to save the pure spirit from the contaminated spirit. Oya represents, they said she's the wind. What does the wind do? Sweep away the stale, the old, and the dead, and bring in the fresh and the new. So the wind represents change and process. Once Shango realized his corrupt character, which was symbolized by a corrupt despot, which is just a metaphor, then he had to go through a process of change. He had to be transformed. But it is change that leads to transformation. So Oya will marry Ogun. And then everybody says, oh, especially the sisters, she's practicing polyandry. Yeah, you brothers with the polygamy, we got you. But change must always marry transformation for the process to be complete. So from the corrupt, becoming aware of its corruption, and to the point it tries to destroy itself through suicide, goes through a process of dynamic change and comes out on the other side as transformation. 3 different beads, one red and white, one black and green, and one Oya can be orange or some type of pale green, depending on what part of the country. But those schools of thought is teaching a metaphorical story of how the human character must develop if you want to be God again. You all understand what I'm saying? Yes. You pick the story of Ogun, the god of iron, we call him. How do you get iron? You take a piece of rock full of contamination and you put it in fire and you burn out the contamination. You burn out the negative and you come up with steel that's usable to make tools, war instruments, and other things. And so what you did, you transformed that rock into a usable instrument. And so when our people found themselves in the Americas, in Brazil, in Cuba, in Jamaica, in South Carolina, in Colombia, they realized we must come up with a way to maintain our system, to teach our sacred science that the enemy can't see. And a significant part of that new school of thought was those elecades, those beads. Now some of this has gone astray, because many of us who are in the tradition, we're trying to present it in the Euro-Islamic motif, the Euro-Christian motif, the Euro-Judaic motif, or some other. Our ancestors didn't have a religion. There'd never been an African religion before the enemy disrupted our process. We had a way of life that was one with nature and one with cosmology. And those things we call culture and rituals, and they were tools to keep us consistent in that understanding. Y'all understand me?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not doing the fire Malcolm X thing now, I'm close? Yeah. Okay. So, when we think of freedom, even the word itself means what? Liberated mind. Free dome. Dome is the mind. Free is from the Greek, to liberate. It means a liberated mind. Why would one want to liberate their mind? Because something had taken away the freedom of that mind. The freedom of that mind is its authenticity. Okay? It's ancient, it's indigenous authenticity. That's what has been taken away. And that's what our freedom struggle got to be about. We fought the war in Mozambique. We fought the war in Angola. We fought the war in Namibia. We fought and still fighting in the Congo. We fought in every nation in Africa, and we still are not free. We bloodied the soil with blood of brothers and sisters in the name of socialism, in the name of some form of Marxism, in the name of capitalism, and we still don't have any freedom. Because that's not what freedom is about. Free people know how to handle their wealth. Free people know how to construct their family. Free people don't kill one another. So, my teacher, and I'm going to examine this because I was the Imam of the Muslim Mosque, Inc. I was El Hajj Amin Shaheed. I did control 17 mosques. Had one of the biggest armies in America, and you didn't even know my name. And to this day, most people have no idea who took over that mosque after the death of Malcolm X. Well, that person was me at 21 years old. But we made a decision that I would live. They would not slaughter me before we could get our work done. And so we operated in a certain way. And we've done a lot of good work. All of those young brothers you've seen out of the Black Liberation Army, coming out of prison after 40 years, 45 years, almost every one of them came out of Malcolm X OAAU, every one. Matula Shakur, Lumumba Shakur, Zai Shakur, Assata Shakur, all of them. Those were Malcolm's cubs. But most of you don't even know their names. Some spent 45 years in prison for the work they did. Some spent 35, a few have died there. They were kids, 17, 18 years old, when they picked up the weapon for your freedom. And so one of my bywords is always, and remember this, if you want to erase the European history, you must master the European mystery, you must master the African history. If you don't master African history, you will not erase European mystery. And I know my big brother's gonna come on soon. And I know he has had a Christian background like me. My grandfather was a Christian minister. At 16, I was already in a pulpit. At 17, I walked away from the church. And I only went back to the mosque because of Malcolm, because I thought I had an obligation after they killed him. But something we We sometimes look at things too shallow. The thing they call Christianity comes from you. The thing they call Islam, it comes from you.
Yes.
The thing they call Judaism, it comes from you. It's all your sacred science reconstructed along the lines of someone else's cultures, values, and interests, along with the pollution that they brought with it. So don't take lightly how we use these tools, because we've used them very well. If you go to the Caribbean, especially through America, we have used them very well. But they weren't efficient after a certain point to take the ship where it had to go. It's time now to come back to the mother, the womb that gave birth to all of it. But we must have an understanding of it. And I'm going to end with this. When you sit and watch, how many people have seen the painting, The Last Supper? Hold your hand. You ever seen the painting, the painting, The Last Supper? How many knew what they were looking at? How many of you know that you're looking at a solar drama that was about astrology and cosmology? Europe at that time did not have a reading, writing culture. So I'm going to bring this in, but this is important. Europe didn't have a reading, writing culture. That painting is their hieroglyph. And the other paintings they used to tell that story. We thought it was just a story about religion. No, that's a hieroglyph speaking to a society that is illiterate. So Christ is sitting in the middle with a halo around his head. He's the sun. He has the 12 symbols of the zodiac going around him. He has the 12 months of the year, and he called disciples. And if you look at the painting, the 12 is broken into 4 groups of 3s, the 4 seasons. And there's more, just in that one painting, of them trying to tell your scientific drama to themselves. We mastered astronomy, but we couldn't bring that to you. There's too much scientific observation and intricacies. So we created astrology to explain astronomy to the black masses. So what I'm saying is that to become free, we must become African. Thank you very much. Because he's a theologian at the highest level. So listen, I've listened to you well, so I don't even you think I'm leaving. No, I'm listening. You know. So, yeah. So that's why I wanted to segue that. So when you listen to the king, you're understanding he's not coming from a crazy space. He's coming from a very historical, a very spiritual, a very African scientific space.
Word, sound, and power. Let us give a warmest appreciative love to Nana Kofi Amponsa. Please. Sometimes you just have to sit in humility and take in what you have just heard, so you understand why I feel so reserved at this time, taking in profound messages of needing to become what our ancestors were before we met them. So, I am instructed to continue our proceedings and to bring forward royalty. And as Nana Kofi Amponsa says, he was paving a way and clearing a path for what we are about to experience. So we're going to take a little break to reorganize the space. Later on, you will hear some word sound from Ras Makapi as well as Jagavi. So bear with us as we realign our space, ready for our next speaker. Don't go anywhere, don't leave your seat, it won't take that long. Okay, you with me?
Yes,
are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, give thanks.